What is going on, everybody, and welcome to a video on weights and biases. I'm a little late to the party on weights and biases because the name Wandb, I don't know, to me, I see that name and it just makes me think of these pop-up, cheap electronics brands, companies or something on Amazon. I don't know. It's just my spam filter filtered out Wandb. So anyway, I have since had the time to play with this. I've been using this now for probably like a couple months, and I am a huge fan of this product. So first of all, it is completely free to use for personal projects, and if you want to use it commercially, then there is like some licensing involved, and you can also run it locally as well. There are some arbitrary limits still to run it locally, so even if it's your personal project and you want to run it locally, there's still some sort of limit. I want to say it's like 100 gigabytes or something, so it's pretty hard to hit that limit unless you're trying to log lots of videos and imagery or something, like essentially frames. Then you might hit that limit, but otherwise I think it would be pretty challenging. Anyway, so it's free to use for your personal projects. So if you're someone who uses TensorBoard, but you often find yourself, kind of moving your TensorBoard logders around to show it all on one page, or even more so, making really long log directory names to contain things like your hyperparameters and all that, chances are this might be for you. Also, if you forget, what were the settings that I used to create that log? Because a lot of times you'll use the same script, you'll edit things, you'll run it again, then you'll edit again, run it again. And so some things might just be lost. If any of that resonates with you, chances are you will love weights and biases. So let's check it out. Let's see a really basic example. It's really quick and easy to actually just get started here. To begin, go to Wandb.ai, you create an account, and then if you just go to Wandb.ai/settings, you can come down here and there's an API key. If you just scroll down, I'm just not going to show it. My only other complaint with besides local storage is what you see right here. Weights and biases. If anyone from Weights and Biases is watching, when I hit, and maybe it's because of my browser, maybe because I'm using Brave, it just doesn't actually save it to a cookie or something. I don't know. But they will hound the heck out of you. So if anybody from Weights and Biases is watching, at least either that thing is not working, or let me choose it as a setting maybe in my profile, but also stop emailing me, all that. It's okay to ask for feedback, but they email so much. You got to stop. But the product is so good that if you want to keep reaching out and asking me if I'm enjoying Weights and Biases, I'll still continue using your product. So anyways, continuing on. So once you have your API key, you'll come over to a terminal, and it is a pip3 install Wandb. I already have it, so I'm not going to run it. And then once you have weights and biases, it's just Wandb login, not ogin, login. And then when you go to login, you will paste that API key. So that's the initial setup, and from there, what we're going to do is I'm going to modify this script. So this is just a really basic TensorFlow example script. Now this will, you can tie in weights and biases to not just TensorFlow and Keras, but also PyTorch, but even more so than that, you can tie it into, let me see if I have it up. Right, so even more than that, you have all these other integrations. So there's all of these versions of TensorFlow, for example, Hugging Face, Spacey, FastAI, Scikit-learn. There's even other integrations. Maybe here also, I've been using it with Stable Baselines 3, for example. So there are tons of ways that you can very easily integrate this. And even if it's not here, well, everything at the end of the day is using TensorFlow or PyTorch, so you can still integrate it. So it's just whether or not it's just going to be super quick and easy, or you're going to have to dig into source code. So anyway, coming back to our simple example from just a TensorFlow example, to begin using it, there's essentially three things that you need to do. So the first thing is we're going to import Wandb, so import weights and biases, and then it is from Wandb and in this case, is it Keras callbacks? It's Wandb.Keras import Wandb callback. Okay, so we definitely need to make those imports. Next, we need to initialize. So wandb.init, and you can pass quite a few things into init, but for now we're just going to pass the project name, which in our case we will just call it Wandb tutorial. Once you've initialized, the last thing that we need to do is I'm going to copy that callback, and down in model.fit, this is where you would pass your callback. So if you were using TensorBoard, you would also pass your TensorBoard here. But for now, callbacks will just equal a list where it is quite literally just the weights and biases callback. And that is it. That's all you have to do. So I'll save that. Come over here. We will Python 3 wandb video.py. We'll run that, and we can immediately see, okay, we're logging in, and hopefully here in a second we'll start to see the actual thing is training and things are being saved. So coming now over to weights and biases, I'll go to projects, and we should see a new project here any second now. There it is. So I can click on that, and actually we can see here, this is the new project. We can see it's running because of this little green dot. Interestingly enough, we can actually click here and stop the runs, and also now it's actually already done, so I'm not going to stop it, but in theory you could. And you might think, oh, that's kind of silly, but actually I found that to be very useful because usually you can put more models on a GPU than is like the most efficient to run any single model. So maybe you're running 5 models on that GPU, and like 5 models fits, but if you were running 3 models, those models would at least step faster. So there's been plenty of times where I'm not near a computer, I don't have shell access, maybe via my phone or whatever, and I'm actually just tracking things in weights and biases, and on my phone, I'll just be like, okay, that model's not working, and I'll just kill it on my phone, and now my other models can at least step faster. Also, sometimes I just get curious and I check it on my phone. I don't think I've ever hosted my own TensorBoard sessions. You could publicly host your TensorBoard. That's just a simple web server. I don't even know if that's like a secure, I don't know if it's actually a smart idea to do so, but you could. So anyways, so here's our run. We have some of the more basic things that you might want to track here. We also have, so you've got accuracy, the epoch that we were on, and loss. And then we also just have like these system metrics and stuff that are tracked. But we can track a whole lot more than just what we're doing here. So this was just a really quick example of like how quickly can we get up and running. So from here, the next thing that I think is really useful to have is just the fact that it can track your hyperparameters to the point where you're not having these really long, in the past I would call them really long log names. Whereas now you can keep using these random names, or you can set the name, but you don't pass all your hyperparameters in the name. So coming back to our code, what I'm going to do, I think this is all from a text-based write-up. So if you want to copy and paste or want to follow along, just go to the text-based version, because I'm not going to be writing out obviously all of this. And then what I'm going to show you now is just a quick example. So I'm just going to copy and paste it from the tutorial. So in this case, I'll also set this to 1, so I'm not on the recording GPU anymore. And this was copied from the tutorial. Thank you. So let's say these are your like hyperparameters. Now in this case, these are some really basic hyperparameters. These are just from the benchmarking that I've been doing on weights and biases. But there will be times where obviously you're going to have way more hyperparameters than even just these few. Like these few could fit in just like a name, but we don't need it. And then once you have your hyperparameters, you make this config dict. And in this case, we're just going to track, okay, what was the GPU, the machine name, how many GPUs, and whether or not we're NV-linked. Again, this is just to have an example of some either hyperparameters or just other information that you want to track. You can put anything in there that you wanted. And then let me just copy and paste the new init method, so no time is wasted here. And here we can see, okay, we've got that. I don't think I capitalized the B. Let me check this. Yeah, okay, so let me fix that before we end up creating a new project. An entity is just what user made it. The config is this config dict here. And again, you can pass whatever the heck you wanted. The sync TensorBoard, in this case, I'm not going to type out TensorBoard, but I'll show you an example of when you can sync TensorBoard. And then finally, if you want to assign a name to the run, you can, and this is just me doing it. And again, we have so few configurations in this case that it's not as important and not as useful, but I'll show you in a moment that I have some with like 20 plus parameters, and it's extremely useful. So with these changes, I'll go ahead and just save that and come back over here. We will run it, and possibly if I can be quick enough, as soon as I see it going, I'll I'll just move it over here. And what I'll do is I'll come back to here, and hopefully if I just, it's actually already there. So for example, we actually can, from the web, we can just stop this. And obviously it doesn't have to happen on the same local computer, and it just sends the kill signal. And as you can see, we actually did get the keyboard interrupt. I think that's really cool, and like such a simple little feature that you would think is like, oh, that's kind of silly. I actually really like it. So anyway, so cool. Okay, so that's like a really quick, here are some quick things that you can do. And then now let me just kind of show you at least some of the things that I've used weights and biases for. So coming over to basically we'll show the benchmarker first. So this is me comparing different GPUs. So one, it's just, obviously it's really quick for me to compare various GPUs and various settings that I've run this benchmarking script on. But also, like, for example, there might be a way I'm sure there's a way in TensorBoard to do like bar charts and very custom line charts and line graphs. But to my knowledge, like this graph here, this graph would be impossible on TensorBoard, because if you add a custom chart, you can only, the thing that you would track would be the one GPU temperature. Whereas, so like if I go like 2 GPUs, like, yeah, so here we're running with 2 GPUs, but we're tracking the temperature of both GPUs on that same chart. Whereas in TensorBoard, one of the things that's annoying is if you do want to track custom stuff, each single custom thing that you want to track has to be its own new chart. Just one example of one annoying pain point. And maybe, feel free to comment below if I'm incorrect here. Maybe there is a way to do it, but I haven't figured it out. And here, I didn't even have to think about it. Like, the charts are just automatic. And whether or not something's a bar chart or a line chart, at least pretty well, Wandb kind of guesses which one you would want and makes it that chart. But you can always go in here and you can edit each of the panels and change basically everything about that chart, right? And then also you can always add a new panel and make it a line chart, bar chart, scatter plot, all of these things. So there's just so much customization that you can do here. Plus, like let's say with GPU temperature, for example, if you come here, you could go to legend and we can edit, like let's say this is our baseline or something. We can make that like a thicker line and all this stuff. And again, maybe this is all possible in TensorBoard, but I do find that beyond very basic things, you just can't do it in TensorBoard. So again, for comparing things, even in this case, we're actually comparing GPUs. We're not even trying to compare just models. I find this to be extremely useful. And then obviously when we're comparing GPUs, things like GPU memory allocated and all this kind of stuff, it's just very useful to have. But even if you're just training models, again, it's very useful to know, like, the bigger model, does it take longer to train? How does it compare against maybe smaller models and our resource allocation and all that, especially if you're trying to test models that you might be running live, all that. So yeah, tons of information here. And then the next thing I want to show, I'll use the Biddle RL7. This is me doing reinforcement learning with stable baselines 3. Again, to incorporate that, it was just like, there's a specific callback. So it's just a different callback, and that's basically it. And again, in this case, so for example, these are 2 of the exact same chart. And again, this is something I don't think it's possible to do in TensorBoard. So it's actually the same data. So the data is the reward. So obviously a lot of times you're going to be tracking maybe loss or accuracy, but in terms of reinforcement learning, I'm very interested in, okay, well, what's the average reward? That's what we care about. So in this case, I actually want to see the average reward, both in terms of, relative time can be useful, but in this case, I like the actual like wall time, just purely because over time I'm making edits. So for example, like this run was a reloaded. So basically, like the training, I loaded that model back in and continued training. Well, if we only looked at that in terms of step, for example, it's like restarting. Now with stable baselines 3, you can modify that so that like wouldn't happen. But anyways, I want to see both. I want to see the step comparison, and then I also want to see, over time. Because again, some models will actually step faster. So it's not just a question of what did the model learn in 10,000 steps? It's sometimes we also care, well, how long did it take that model to do that? So these two charts I like to see, but in TensorBoard, you can only have all of your charts indexed by, wall time or relative time or step. Whereas here, you can have whatever you want with whatever charts. It doesn't even have to be these two charts, right? So anyway, I really like that. The system stuff I wouldn't track so much here. And also these charts are going to be just like crazy amounts of information because I have so many runs that we're like looking at. But one of the other cool things, for example, is if we can get away from our laggy charts, we can come over to this table. And this table, again, is really cool. We're tracking this. We have basically all of our hyperparameters, but then also just other information. So again, we get some initial observation or last observation information. We get how far are we into the training? How long has this model been running? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, everything is here. I think you can see, yeah, this is like scroll bar. There's so much information here. And you can remove columns from the table, add them. All that. Also, like in my case, since everything is discrete delta, by this time, I think everything actually probably has the same discrete delta numbers, but initially that wasn't the case, and they were actually different little bins. And again, all these things, like I don't even know, how would you encode that into like just a log file's save name? You'd have to have like some sort of notes text file that kind of helped you to cross-reference all this stuff, whereas here it just helps so much with the organization. And then finally, when you get to the point, same thing with like Hertz, that was another thing that was changing between a lot of models. Now it's not. But these are all like frame stack, Hertz, discrete delta. These are all things that I've added. Like these are configuration things that I just wanted to make sure was saved into the training. But of course I didn't add that to the name. Because again, if I put everything in the name, it would be like, 600 characters. So I can click on like one of the runs. Like let's say I really like this run here, and I want to play that locally. So the log files in my case, the way I saved them was just like the timestamp of when the model started training. So, but I don't know that timestamp. I don't remember. So I click on that model, and then once that model actually loads, basically what we're seeing is just all the charts, but just for like the one model. Again, this is all customizable. I could make this however I wanted, but very rarely am I looking at just one model here. But then I can go to the overview, again, just for this one specific model. And I know it's like something name or something like that. So if I just type in name, model save name, boom, I've got the timestamp. Again, it's like everything is just really quickly and easily accessible, tracked, all that stuff. Like I don't know how I would do this again without like some sort of sloppy file or something. And then also another cool thing that I just would never give this to myself, but it's nice to have, is the logs. So we can pull up the logs, and these are quite literally your console logs. Like as this thing has run, it just saves all of the logs. And if you're ever hitting errors, or there's so many times where you're going to want to have you'd like to be able to go back and read the logs, but you can't, because who saves their logs, right? I don't anyways, but they're here and they're saved. The other cool thing, let's say, like for example, TensorBoard. So if you were also running TensorBoard, you had the actual TensorBoard saved, we can click on this. This will probably also take a moment. So yeah, take up to 30 seconds. So once that's done, I'll show you the TensorBoard. All right, and here we have the basic TensorBoard that is given to us from, this is just the Stable Baselines 3 baseline TensorBoard. And as you can see, there's way less information here. We have no way of, if we wanted more charts, we would have to go in there and customize the code and add those charts. And that would just be a nightmare. I would not do it. So anyway, but if you needed TensorBoard for some reason, or you're using a project that does have a really cool TensorBoard chart that you don't have, or you can't figure out with weights and biases, for example, you could still load up TensorBoard this way as well. So overall, I mean, this is longer than I wanted to make this video anyways, but overall, there's just so much here, so much to use. It's free. I would definitely recommend using it. So the last thing I'll just mention is sweeps. I haven't personally used much of sweeps, but if you're looking for something kind of like the Keras tuner or something like that, you can check out sweeps. They also have some documentation here. and essentially you can kind of like copy one of their projects and stuff, but they also will, like, it's super simple as long as it makes sense to be using sweeps. In my case, I could only like run so many of these simulations at a time that it makes, I just would rather manually go through it. But for many projects, many models, it would make a lot of sense to just like quickly run through just as many as you can at a time and quickly like search for like the best parameters. So anyways, there's also that there. You can copy one of their projects and just kind of get an idea for like how that's working, but it's just automated hyperparameter tuning. So anyways, I think that's everything I really want to show about weights and biases, at least for now. If you think I forgot something, or you want to highlight one of the features of weights and biases, if you've been using it that you like, let me know below. Otherwise, I'll leave it here. Questions, comments, concerns, whatever, feel free to leave them below. Otherwise, I will see you all in another video.